Welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops.
And Omari Sackhoff II, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. If you are not listening to Wes and Blake Silverman over on the Pin Down on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel, you absolutely should be. Obviously, you should be subscribed to Omari on the Detroit Free Press and free subscription to the Motor City Hoops Substack, where I have game notes and analysis after every game. Even after tomorrow's game, where I will be with O2 in Denver, Colorado, where I think, Omari, it's actually warmer tomorrow in Denver than here in Kansas. What's the weather like up there? What do I need to pack for my trip to watch the Pistons in Colorado tomorrow?
Yeah, it's currently 33 degrees. I think it's going to be warmer tomorrow, like in the 40s. So yeah, just leaving Detroit, it was like 11 degrees. So this is way better, like way, way better.
I think I was looking just to make sure that nothing crazy was going to happen there tomorrow on my drive up or while I was there. I was like, man, it's actually warmer. YouTube user says that we are on the wrong side. Wes, I don't know if we can fix that or not. There we go. Well done, Wes. There we go. And what up, Doe from DFizz313. So just a quick primer here, guys. We are going to talk a little bit about the games over the last couple of days, the last couple of games, I guess I should say. And then we are going to give you a full NBA trade deadline preview. You guys submitted your trades. We're going to talk about the names. We'll talk a little bit about the value of those trades and all of that, but mostly focusing in on the names. So, O2, we got a big win. Not a big win. They beat the Kings. The Kings aren't very good. But they won by a lot against the Sacramento Kings after a tough loss to the Houston Rockets. The game before that, they beat the Pelicans by 8. What are just some general thoughts here over the last few games that Detroit has played?
Yeah, I think Cade's wrist has got to be something that people have been, tapped into. He 2 games a couple weeks ago with the right wrist contusion. And when he came back, he still kind of struggled with his shot. The wrist was still bothering him. So I thought in Sacramento, well, not in Sacramento, but against Sacramento, that was the first time since that wrist injury that, I thought it didn't look like it was impacting him. He agreed. Thought that was part of why they struggled against Houston a bit. It was just that Cade didn't shoot it that well, and then they also kind of struggled from 3. But got back on track against Sacramento. They shot really well from 3. They have been struggling with that a little bit. Just an all-around pretty good game. Sacramento's definitely the opponent that you kind of want after a loss like Houston to get back on track and find your offensive rhythm. So that's the main thing for me, just that Cade looked a lot better. And I think in the 4 games before last night, he shot like 30% from the field. He was even like 67% at the line. So clearly something was up. Ideally for the Pistons, his performance against Sacramento is a sign that that's in the past. So obviously we'll have a better idea of that once we see how they look against Denver tomorrow.
Derek Brown says, enjoy a nice dessert on me tomorrow, guys. Enjoy your time. Thank you so much, Derek, for the super chat. We truly, truly appreciate you and all of your support and everybody's support. I know Derek's been with us for a while now, and I do think we have a Derek Brown trade that we'll discuss a little bit later that he submitted on Twitter, maybe 1 or 2 of those. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, I thought the Cade storyline was really important, Omari. I'll be honest, I was pretty critical of Cade. I don't know if it was the Houston game or the game before. I think it was the Houston game. I thought it was one of his worst defensive performances of the season. And you know me, O2, I'm the one screaming from the rooftop that Cade is a good defender. He's a quality defender, especially for being a star. And I thought his off-the-ball defense, I think it was the Houston game, was particularly bad. I thought he came back against Sacramento, who's just not a very good team, not a very good defensive team, but I thought he had an all-around really good game. If I'm not mistaken, and maybe you mentioned this already, I feel like his wrist wasn't wrapped for the first time since the injury. Is that correct? I think the Sacramento.
Yeah, that's correct. He didn't have a brace on it. Yeah.
So I don't know what that means, but he obviously played really well in that game. I want to bring up Ausar Thompson from the Sacramento game, and we can bounce to all sorts of guys. I mentioned a week ago the idea of maybe it being time for Ausar Thompson to really just lean into being an off-the-ball offensive player. Let's put this on-ball, whatever usage stuff to rest, at least for the rest of this season. This is a team that needs to start developing the chemistry to make their push through the end of the year and into the playoffs. Obviously, some of that will happen at the deadline as well. I thought he played a really good game, Omari on the offensive end. And I realize the box score stat doesn't necessarily back it up. I think he only played 20 games. I thought he cut off the ball really well. I thought some of his cuts led to assists. I think he had 5 or 6 assists in that game. And I think a majority of them came from off the ball usage to start. So I really thought Ausar's off the ball offensive performance was very good in this game against Sacramento.
Yeah, I thought he did a good job of cutting. He only had 5 points, but I just think he looked unburdened and more decisive, which is what you want to see from him. I don't want to say that the ball handling aspect had become a burden for him, but I think you saw instances of him thinking more so than playing. And last night, it was just more so him playing. Maybe you recast him mentally, less of a secondary playmaker and more of a tertiary, where it's more so just making reads off of cuts, pushing the ball in transition, stuff like that. But yeah, like you said, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, couple steals. Thought it was just an all-around pretty solid performance for him. He only played 20 minutes, like you said. But other than that, good game for Ausar. I think just with Daniss having a good game too, you think about overall roles. You certainly want the ball in Danniss's hands a bit more, and Ausar as that off-ball attacker, I think that suited him pretty well.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, they have to figure out the on-ball stuff, and that's what we're going to get into, right? Like here, through the majority of the episode, we're going to be talking about the ways and this team could potentially improve if they need to improve, all of that. But I just think that really suits him well. Mr. Ray says, hit the like button on the way in, folks, or the way out whenever that time comes. Yes, help us continue to grow and spread the word on the Pistons polls for the Detroit Pistons community. Any other players that you want to touch on? You know who else I thought played really well, especially offensively, and even through the slow start? Detroit got off to a slow start against Sacramento. I think Duncan Robinson's playing really good basketball. O2, man, like he does some really nice things. I threw the screen assist stat at you last week. He makes shots. I just think he's a really good player, man. And I think he's doing more than just knocking down 3-pointers. He finds other ways to contribute to this team as well.
Yeah, I think he adds a variety of dynamics to this offense, not just with his shooting, but like with his cutting, with his finishing. Like I think he's a much better finisher at the rim, having watched him for 40-ish games now. Then maybe I knew coming in. I think he sees the floor pretty well. He moves the ball pretty well. He does a lot of good stuff on offense just in general. He kind of had that reputation, I think, as a floor spacer, but the offense just opens up a lot when he's in there. And to me, that goes beyond spacing. I think he maps the entire floor pretty well, and he's just always making stuff happen. Even just beyond that, just overall hustle and effort he plays with too. It just seems like a lot of good stuff happens when he's out there, and he's been so important to this offense. But he's only missed 2 or 3 games this year. The offense just looked terrible in those games he was out in. I thought last night was just a good example of just the various ways he opens things up and makes things a little bit easier, I think, for his 4 teammates.
I think another player we need to talk about is Daniss Jenkins. I think he really plays into this conversation. And I feel like we've seen, obviously, Caris LeVert has been out, so that's allowed this opportunity for Daniss to get more time. I think he's taking advantage of that time. I feel like for me, I was early on Daniss Jenkins, like, hey, this dude might actually be a player. And now compared to the rest of the fan base, I've been a little bit slower on like, hey, he should be fully ingrained into the rotation. He should be in the playoff rotation if we're talking 9-man rotation and all of that. At the end of the day, this dude has to stay on the court for them the rest of the year. I still don't know what the playoff rotation looks like, O2. I don't even know if I believe that they end up in a 9-man rotation in the playoffs. I truly wonder if they end up being a team that plays more guys than that and kind of bucks the trend of what you normally see. But right now, Daniss Jenkins is averaging 8 points on 40% from 3. I think his creation is really good. I think he's the second best ball screen operator on this team. I think he's about the only other guy that you would call a true point guard. That's Jaden Ivey's almost exclusively off the ball. Caris LeVert is combo guard at best. He has a real role on this team, especially depending on what happens at the deadline.
No, he absolutely does. I agree with you. I think he's the best at, working ball screens other than Ned Cade. And he's really the only other guy on this team who I think could wear that point guard hat or point guard badge, whatever you want to call it, like Cade. The role he plays on this team, I think, is just too important for him to not play. I feel like he's still been a little bit on the outskirt of the rotation at times. So we've seen him pick up DNPs here and there. But every time he's out there, you notice him out there. And that's just because his passing really pops. Like he really gets after it defensively. He can space the floor. Like at 6'4", he's not a small guard. It's not like he's somebody defenses could try to attack or, put in motion or anything to try to pick a hole in their defense. He can hold his own. He just checks a lot of boxes for them. He's very, very important just as that point guard who can keep things moving when Cade sits. And he's earned everything he's gotten and arguably more. We've talked about it a bit on this pod, especially with Keith Smith the other week, but it would be shocking to not see him get that standard deal. I think his last game is like February 5th, like the same day as the trade deadline, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. But yeah, he's just been so important for this team. I think he's exceeded any reasonable expectation just past the midway point. And he's got to be a guy playing, to me, a minimum 20, 25 nights. 25 minutes a night just because of everything he does. That's been good for this team.
Well, the other thing is, Mari, he can shoot it well enough. He can play next to Cade. And this is what is special about Cade is he has versatility in terms of where he can quote unquote play in the lineup. Like when Cade Cunningham is on the court, he is the point guard on the offensive end. He's the primary initiator, but Cade has versatility on the defensive end because of his size where you can play a quote unquote smaller player like a Daniss Jenkins and let him. I could see matchups in the playoffs where Daniss makes sense, where like he's the guy that makes the most sense to chase around a Darius Garland or somebody like that, right? Whenever you get in to those specific matchups. So I think, listen, shout out Daniss Jenkins first and foremost, right? Like earning his spot into the NBA, onto the two-way, and now what seems like a true 15-man roster spot, however that plays out, whether it's for the rest of the year, some sort of other contract, whatever. Shout out Daniss Jenkins. And again, credit to the find of Troy Weaver. This is what Pistons fans are always clamoring for, is this diamond in the rough. Where's the undrafted free agent or even the second round pick that comes in? And Troy Weaver is Trajan Langdon. My apologies to Trajan. I'm probably going to
wait for you to pass. I was going to wait for you to finish up.
Did I do it both times? Did I say it both times?
You did say it both times.
Oh, no, Trajan, I'm so sorry. He's going to ignore me tomorrow whenever I see him at the arena. Trajan Langdon has done an incredible job. And it's not just Daniss, right? Like Javonte Green, Paul Reed, he's done a really good job rounding out this roster. And these guys, I mean, Javonte's another guy, Omari, like every time he plays, his off the ball defense is so much fun. He's always getting disruptions. He's digging, he knocks down a shot. He brings energy. Those guys are awesome, man. They do so much for this team and have been such huge contributors to the success thus far.
Yeah, 100%. Javonte, it's funny. Like he was signed, I think mid-August and sort of as an under the radar signing. Like, you add a vet who can come in, like you don't expect or really know how big that role is going to be. But he's like the guard version of Paul Reed. Like, I feel like I've said that before, but he just comes in and he just wreaks some havoc. It seems like he has a knack for knocking down timely three-pointers. I actually think his three-point percentage is pretty decent. Like, he's been shooting it a bit better, I feel like, in January. And he just brings a lot to this team. The athleticism. He really fits that second unit to a T. He's even closed games here or there. Yeah, another guy I think that's exceeded every expectation. And yeah, credit goes to Trajan, obviously, for identifying guys who maybe were a bit unheralded, but have come in and just absolutely fit this team to a T.
Yeah, 36% from three right now. I think I had this conversation on the Substack the other day. Somebody was like, they weren't like calling me out, but they were like, why are you questioning the 3-point percentage? Like, where does it need to get? And I think I actually looked up his catch and shoot percentage solely. And that was even closer to being like, hey, this is probably manageable. And he plays with a ton of confidence, we get caught up in what's the 9-man rotation? What's the 10-man rotation? When you get to the playoffs, the rotations shrink. And I know we're about to talk about like some consolidation trades. And I do kind of wonder if this just ends up being a team that plays 10 guys still in the playoffs. And in one series, it's this guy. And in the next series, it's a different guy. And you can play big or you can play small. And you can survive an injury to just about anybody other than Cade Cunningham. I don't know. It'll be interesting how JB plays it out. I do think we need to talk about Jaden Ivey because once we get into the trade conversations, it's going to be a lot of we're trading Karis LeVert and Jaden. And we don't have time to stop and talk about those guys as much. So another guy who's shooting the ball well right now, Omari, 38% from three. I don't know the rest of the impact of his game right now, but he is making 3-pointers and that's good. Like that's huge. I would like to see a little bit more to the rim and some of those things, but he is knocking down shots. where are you at with JI now that we've seen we're almost 30 games into this now? I know the minutes is still under 500, but we are almost 30 games in.
Yeah, he is knocking down threes. Seemed like he might have slumped from the arc for a bit, and now that's starting to trickle back up. He was, a 41% prior to the injury, and he's back up to 38 now. So on a team that these shooters, I think that's been good. He has some big ones against Houston. I thought he had a couple last night against Sacramento. I feel like he's not back to being J.I. yet, especially I think the downhill aspect to his game, just that speed and burst. I feel like we haven't really quite seen that yet. But he's been a contributor on the offense 100%. And yeah, I mean, 38% from three, that speaks for itself. They need that. If he could come in and knock down some threes, like even just that, I think has been pretty helpful for this team.
Yeah. Anybody else you want to touch on? I mean, I know my thing is like, we know who Cade is. He's going to be on this team. We know who Jalen Duren is. He's going to be on this team. Asar, we talked about. Isaiah Stewart, to me, is like very much locked in, O2. Like, I think the thing with Isaiah Stewart, we've spent all of this time talking about his defense, and rightfully so. The offense has really grown so much, and it's not even really the 3-point shot. Like, he is at 34%, which isn't, catastrophic or anything, but it's his finishing around the rim. Isaiah Stewart is almost 60%. No, he is over 60% on 2-pointers. He's 75% from the line. Isaiah Stewart is having a very good offensive season. And I think when you consider what Jalen Duren does on the offensive end, you are getting 28, almost 30 points a night from your starting center, your center rotation. That's a lot of production offensively.
Yeah. Stu's been so good defensively that I feel like his offensive improvement's flown under the radar a bit, but his finishing at the rim has been fantastic. That's something that's been a weakness for him at times. And it just seems like this year he's just finishing a lot stronger, with both hands. I feel like he's catching the ball better just across the board. There were times where I feel like his lack of size and burst, you could kind of feel that, when he would finish at the rim. And this season, I feel like that's been less evident.
He's figured it out, right?
He's figured it out. I feel like he's just done a much better job of just bustling through people, being more opportunistic, picking his spots, just finding gaps of space, like whatever it may be. Like he's done a much better job of all of that. And then like you mentioned, the shooting, he's knocking out 34% right now. That's kind of hovered between, I feel like 34 and 37 this year. But again, a guy that can knock them down, you're not leaving him wide open. You combine that with just what he's brought on defense. And yeah, I mean, he's been one of the MVPs for this team this season, just what he's brought on both ends. But 100%. I mean, that offensive improvement has been very noticeable, but I also feel like that's fallen under the radar a little bit too.
I would just quickly shout out, I think the development of his left-hand finishing is a huge aspect of this. You can throw defenders off a lot if you have the ability to finish with your left. And so I think through the first half of the season, he just kept finishing with his left and finishing with his left and finishing with his left. Well, now it's probably on the scouting report that he's willing to finish with his left. And so now he can use that to his advantage to get back to his right hand when he needs to. You have some sushi to go eat here in about 30, 40 minutes. So we're going to keep this moving along to some deadline conversation. And are you willing to trade Paul Reed in a consolidation trade? I don't like the idea of just getting rid of Paul Reed and not having the third center. I'm not saying Paul Reed is untouchable. That is crazy talk. But I do think he plays a valuable role on this team. We got to go to break. When we come back, we will dive deep for the rest of the episode into the Pistons trade deadline conversation.
We are back with segment 2. Trade deadline is February 5th, which is like 10 days from now or something like that. So been a quiet deadline sort of across the league as a whole, outside of the, Trae Young trade, but that's probably going to change here pretty soon. So just from the Pistons standpoint, just broadly, Bryce, what would be a successful trade deadline for you? Because there's been a lot of talk about, well, they should make a big move and go for a wide open East, this and that. Do you feel like they need to do that, or is it just more so maybe something Dennis Schroeder level like last year where you address a very specific need with a vet and then just keep it going from there?
So I think in general, my stance has stayed the same in terms of I do think that this team needs more shooting / scoring. If they really want, listen, if Trajan and the front office and whatever, Wes has brought this up and others as well, like this young team has earned the right to go figure out what they are in the playoffs with this young core. And I don't disagree with that. And if that's what the front office wants to see, I will not be mad about that 0-2. I believe if they essentially stand pat at the deadline and go into the playoffs with this roster, I think it will be flawed. And I think those flaws will show up in the playoffs. And it may not lead to as deep of a run as what it could be. Again, I'm okay. I'm okay if that's what happens. I would still like them to go out and add some sort of shooting or scoring. And I think, I'm not saying I'm drawing a hard line in the stand, 0-2. I think 1 first round pick is all I would want to trade. I think I'm kind of out on the Jaren Jackson Jr.'s, Trey Murphy's, those things that are going to take all of the matching salary and multiple first round picks. I think that's where I'm at right now. I could, after the Rockets game, I may have answered differently, right? Because I think that was a game that exposed this a little bit. But I guess to throw out a couple names, if you can get Norm Powell for 1 first round pick, I'm kind of in on Norm Powell. I don't know where you've landed on Michael Porter Jr., but if Michael Porter Jr. only takes 1 first round pick, I'm a little more interested in that conversation. So I guess in general, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I think MPJ is sort of in a unique spot of he just so clearly checks the biggest boxes this team needs offensively. And with him being on a deal that will be an expiring deal next year, I don't know realistically how much Brooklyn can ask for him. If he could get him with 1 draft pick, I think that's tough to, say no to. It depends on the pick a little bit, but from a value proposition, I think that's as good as it gets. But otherwise, the sense I've continued to get from this team is that they're not looking to shake things up too much. We actually talked to JB about it at practice, and this wasn't the exact quote, but more or less, he just brought up that this team has crushed it so far. They're 5.5 games in the lead for first place in the East. That's not a small accomplishment. They have absolutely shattered any realistic expectation, that I think people broadly had for them, even a lot of fans. So they're not approaching this deadline I'll raise my hand too. I think I had them 4th.
You had them a little higher than me. I had them a little listen, it's nobody had them on the 60-win pace. Real quick here, Fly Monk 321, that drop foot is a little scary. The injury stuff is scary with Michael Porter Jr. And then this is the other thing that's always important. This is why the Michael Porter Jr. one isn't as enticing to me as Norm Powell, is because of the money. And somebody asked, what would you want if it wasn't a shooter scorer and it would just be a little bit more depth in the front court, at the 4 position, not at the 5 position. We've already talked about how they have enough there. Yeah. If you don't get a shooter, what would you be okay with getting? Give me somebody that can play true minutes at the 4 just to give you another option. So what about for you? Where Najee Marshall's an interesting name. We'll get into all of these in just a second.
Yeah, I don't see I'm getting Najee Marshall, but I feel like we're pretty aligned overall on the approach there.
Okay, so let's go ahead and just start. Let's start. Here's what we're going to do, guys. I'm going to give the trade out of respect to everybody who took the time to do this. Okay. Real quick here, GStew114. Finally caught you guys live. Great surprise driving home from work from Arizona. And yes, I'll be there on Thursday to hopefully see a Pistons win for my birthday. First off, happy birthday. I hope you have a great one. I hope you get a Pistons win. YouTube user does not need to be starred, Wes. He is trolling me. Him and I both know that Gershon Yabusele is not an option for this team. You can unstar that right now, but always appreciate you. Okay, I'm going to throw him out, and we're going to very, very vaguely talk about the value and all of the other stuff. Mostly we're going to use it as an avenue to talk about the player. So here's the first one. This is a Kyle Metz tweet. And just to everybody knows, if you follow him on Kyle on Twitter, which you should, he just throws out ideas. Not every one of these is him saying, hey, this is what I would do or should do or want them to do. Jaden Ivey plus Isaac Jones for Colin Sexton. So again, we don't need to get into the Jaden Ivey value, whatever stuff. What are your thoughts on Colin Sexton, the player?
On paper, Sexton does a lot of things that this team needs. He's a very viable ball handler. He can really shoot it. He's a guy that could heat up, I feel like swing outcomes for games. So on paper, I think he makes a lot of sense for this team. Contract-wise, I don't think he's too high up there either. So, I feel like, defensively, you are giving up something a bit with him. He's a smaller guard. He would actually probably be the smallest rotation player for this team. So I feel like that's worth bringing up. What he brings offensively, I think he also gives up some defensively. So there's some give and take there. But just talking about the offensive end, he does a lot of stuff for this team that I think would be good.
Yeah, so I like Colin Sexton more than most people do. I think he's a good player. I think he's a good point of attack defender. And I do think he can knock that, like the 3-point percentage is, has been solid. The question was, can he shoot off the ball? This year, Colin Sexton is 45% on catch and shoot threes. He is 51% on unguarded catch and shoot threes. The one thing I would say is, like, is it a needle mover? I think is the good question. Like, how much better is he than what you're already getting? And I think that's going to be the question with a lot of this. It's like, we just gave Javonte Green all of this love. How much of an upgrade is Najee Marshall? I would say he is an upgrade, but how much is? So I think right now you would have to say that Colin Sexton, just based on how many years he's played in the NBA, you could believe in more than Daniss Jenkins. I'm not saying he would outplay Daniss Jenkins in a playoffs. Like, we've never seen. Daniss hasn't got that chance yet. But I do think that's the equation here. I think what really slows this down for me is I don't want to trade Jaden Ivey for a 1-year guy. And you mentioned the Colin Sexton contract. He's at $19 million on an expiring. Ivey versus Sexton defensively. I would say Colin Sexton is actually, I think Sexton is better at the point of attack. If you need someone, Arthur, to just stay in front of the ball, I think Colin Sexton does that better. But J.I.'s physical tools probably lend to better, like, disruption and some of those things.
Yeah. I'm not as tapped in with Sexton's defense, but yeah, I mean, again, yeah, he fits. I think the expiring contract aspect of it is pretty interesting too, because then it's more so of a rental. So it's like, do you really want to give up, asset-wise anything for a guy who may not be back next season? I think that's a valid question. Also, realistically, how much can you get from J.I. this season offensively? Because you assume that he's only going to get better as he starts to feel better, starts to trust his leg a bit more. So definitely some debate there. But like I said, offensively, I've always been a fan of Sexton's game. Even since he was a rookie. And I mean, he could play with Cade. I think he can probably run the offense a bit, but he says you could put him next to Daniss even. That would be a pretty crowded, I think, backcourt rotation with Sexton, because he absolutely has to play. But yeah, he could shoot. He does a lot of good stuff. I think he would fit this team.
I like Colin Sexton. Like, that's my thing. I can understand people who are like, hey, if you're like all in on Daniss Jenkins and he's going to be, be able to hold it down in the playoffs, then, a name like that may not be something that excites you. Yeah, Kyle says Sexton would be what you hope LeVert would be. Wes says he got Sexton for LeVert Sasser in 2 seconds in his mock trade deadline. Hey, Laz, what is up, our guy? Let's go. I assume that's actually him, not somebody just, parading around as him. I'll trust it for now. We'll see what some of the comments are from him. We know what Laz is thinking. All right, next one from Ryan Laprade. I'm so sorry. I hate trying to pronounce people's names. It makes me sad and feel bad. 4 second-round picks for Coby White. Again, I don't want to get too much in the value here, Omari. Coby White, similar idea, except I think the difference with Coby White is, like, Coby comes in as your starting 2 guard. I think if you trade for Colin Sexton, he's coming off the bench as your 3rd guard. If you're trading for Coby White, you're moving Duncan Robinson to the bench, and Coby White is that theoretical not theoretical, he's done it, that 20-point per game perimeter guy playing off of Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, big fan of Coby White's game. He's just a bucket, can really shoot the ball. I think he's really, really grown as a playmaker as well. And like you said, if you trade for him, he's probably going to come in and be your starting guard. He's been a pretty good starter for Chicago over the last 3 years or so. Yeah, I mean, really like his game. I think he has some of the same upsides of the Colin Sexton. He's a little bit bigger, I think, than Colin Sexton is. I think Sexton's probably like more 6'2", and Kobe's a little bit closer to 6'4". Yeah, like his game, can really shoot it, play make, checks a lot of boxes. I'm a fan of Coby White. I think he would fit this team.
So again, just, everybody wants to know off the ball. Coby White, 41% on catch and shoot this year, 47% on unguarded catch and shoot. And he is a guy that can drive the ball a little bit. He can get to the free throw line a little bit. He's averaging 5 free throw attempts per game this year. Not even playing 30 minutes right now. Somebody asked about the contract expiring, which makes this interesting, but also maybe, isn't there something weird with White's free agency? Not that I can think of, other than that he's an unrestricted free agent. That's the only thing I could think of is, so he would fit into the TPE, which is why this would work as outlined, assuming, like, I don't know if Chicago's taking 4 second-round picks, My guess is you would have to do better than that if Kobe White was on the market. My guess is somebody else is going to offer that. But that is the idea of a trade if I'm trading for Kobe White and I don't know if I'm going to have the money to retain him. I guess the trickiness here is he's not restricted. So it's not like JI or JD where you match an offer sheet and stuff like that. He can't be extended because the number's too low to extend off of and all of that. But yeah, I don't think that that's an awful value. And then you can decide what to do with the money after. Kobe White's interesting.
And also, like, mentioning that he could fit into the TPE. Obviously, they have that $14.3 million where they could just absorb a salary. And that expires, I think, early July. I think some of the thought there is it really worth saving it for the offseason when you can use it now? So, yeah, Kobe White only making $12 billion a year. Very, very reasonable, very underpaid, I think, for what he's given Chicago. The fact that you could just absorb it right into that TPE certainly adds to the value there.
So Zach Erickson brings up something interesting. Are you not concerned about Kobe White's lack of defense? He is worse than Ivey on defense. My short answer is no. And the reason I say no is Duncan Robinson isn't that good on defense either. And this team is the second best defense by far with Duncan Robinson playing all of those minutes. Now, if we're trying to play Duncan Robinson and Kobe White together, that's a little tough to manage and all of that. And yeah, like Mr. Ray says, like you have Vooch behind him, like who knows what Kobe White does defensively in the Pistons infrastructure and coach and culture and all of that. It's absolutely fair to bring up. No question. Absolutely fair to bring up. I'm a little less worried about it than maybe others are because I've seen this team survive quote unquote bad defenders and still be this good defensively. Shout out Derek Brooks. He had a Kobe White trade as well. Next player, again from Ryan, he says Karis LeVert for Klay Thompson. Kyle, you might look that if you have a chance and see if that straight up actually works on Spotrac. Shout out Keith Smith. Thoughts on Klay Thompson in general, Omari? I think the big thing with Klay is obviously the defense isn't what it used to be. The offense isn't what it used to be, even though he's still a really good shooter and elite gravity. He does still have a year left on his deal.
Yeah, I don't think I need to, explain Klay Thompson, elite shooter, even at his current age. What's funny is that I think he's actually averaging a career low from 3 percentage-wise, and it's 38%, which, I think would comfortably be the second best on the Pistons behind Duncan. So he comes in, fills a very specific role. Like the other guys we talked about, I don't know how much you're going to get from him defensively, but the Pistons have also been so good defensively that I'm not really concerned with whoever they bring in, honestly, being like a great defender, because if you sacrifice a little bit defensively and get a pretty substantial upgrade offensively, that's a good trade-off for this team. Whatever problems they solve in the playoffs, just being able to get you a bucket will make up for, by far whatever you're giving up defensively. I feel like, with Duren and Stu back there, P. Reed, like you've got a bunch of plus defenders up front with Ron, Assar, even Cade. This team is built to be able to handle a 2-guard who comes in and just provides 3-point shooting. So that's what Klay does. High volume, high accuracy. Obviously would fill a huge need for this team.
Yeah, I like the idea. I don't love that there's a second year on the deal. I don't know how that would, change things with their flexibility. I'd have to really look into the cap numbers when you consider what Jalen Duren's about to get paid and those type of things. So, that's my thing with Klay. If it was a 1-year deal, I think that'd be a great idea. And the thing with Klay is you don't even have to disrupt the starting lineup. You can just bring him off the bench, leave Duncan Robinson in the starting lineup. And like my other thing is, okay, so Truth Teller says, I'm going to ask you again, where does another guard fit on this team and who are you taking out of the lineup to make it work? I guess my question is, who are you absolutely sold is the 4-guard playoff rotation? And, and then what happens if there's an injury? So I guess that would be my answer is, I guess if you are sold that it's Daniss and Karis LeVert, then maybe there's not a need for that. If you're sold that it's Daniss and J.I., then I guess there's no need for that. I don't know that any of those guys have played so well that I'm not willing to at least hear out other options, especially for a team where 3-point shooting has been an issue, and the idea of bringing in some more of that makes a little bit of sense. Yeah, that would be my answer. Next one from Base Pistons, Ivy, Clintman, some second-round picks. Klay Thompson and Najee Marshall. So this is where the Najee Marshall conversation comes into play. What are your thoughts on Najee Marshall? Doesn't really solve the three-point shooting, but I think he kind of fits what this team is about.
Yeah, I mean, really good defensively. Could play either forward position. So I think just based on that, he's a guy that makes sense. But he has not shot the ball well. Really in his career, he's only shot the ball well like once. And he was one of the guys that, he was down in New Orleans and he worked with Fred Vincent, and maybe a Fred Vincent reunion will unlock that jumper a bit. Because if he's a guy that can shoot at least 36% from three, then I think he's perfect for this team. But he's also a guy where, I wonder if Dallas is really keen on trading him. Obviously, they're figuring out some stuff long term, but he's young. He fits what they're trying to do. I'm curious to see if he's a guy that they're willing to move off of. I know that there's been some rumors that, he's somebody that they're probably leaning toward keeping, but with 10 days, we'll see how that shakes out. Defensively, he fits. Offensively, would want to see him knock down more threes that he has, because I haven't checked this percentage this week. The last I checked, I think he was hovering around 31%, right? It's not been good at all. So
he had the one really good year, and I think I was screaming for, that he was an underrated free agent signing for somebody like Detroit. And, essentially he switched places with Derrick Jones Jr. And then in Dallas, it's below 30% from three after the year that you mentioned. I mean, the sample size suggests 900 career threes, and he's right at 30%. The sample size suggests that it's more likely he's a low 30% three-point shooter. He does defend. He has a little bit more off the bounce juice than probably what he gets credit for. I don't know that it's good enough to move the needle. It's not like he's going to be your primary ball handler in non-Cade minutes. Next one again from Ryan, Karis LeVert, Sasser, a couple seconds from Malik Monk and Keon Ellis. So we move into the Sacramento King part of this conversation. Thoughts on Malik Monk and or Keon Ellis?
Yeah, I mean, both of those guys, I think, fit. Blake Monk, could really knock down threes at a high rate. He gives you some playmaking as well, some athleticism. I kind of put him in the same mode as guys like Colin Sexton and Kobe White. Maybe not quite, to the level those guys are as a scorer. But yeah, I mean, Malik could really shoot it. And then Keon Ellis, he shot the three ball well, strong defender. Both of those guys fit this group. Keon Ellis, I think, is a guy that would really fit this group long term, just as a 3-and-D wing. He's probably the most valuable asset Sacramento has, so I'm curious. I don't know if they would just include him in the deal with Malik Monk and not maybe get better draft capital out of it. We'll have to see how that shapes up. But both of those guys would be rotation players, I think, for the Pistons. Both address their need for shooting, and then Keon Ellis can really defend too. So there's a lot to like there.
Yeah, as Mr. Ray says, Malik Monk and Keon Ellis are two names me and Bryce have always been high on. I'm the wrong guy to ask about this trade because I think Malik Monk is good. I realize people don't like the contract and all of that, but I mean, I think he can really score. I think he can pass. I think Sacramento is a disastrous situation right now. And Keon Ellis, the thing with Keon is what are you going to do with the contract? That's another convoluted contract situation you got to figure out. I think he's good at basketball. He was very efficient last night against Detroit. I like the idea of those. Somebody brought up a good point. To Truth Teller's point earlier, you bring in two of these guys. I mean, now you are benching all of the guards there. But because I think you're probably playing both of these. I do think it brings some defense. It brings some scoring. They're definitely interesting names. Let's go to break real quick. When we come back, we'll go ahead and touch on Michael Porter Jr. real fast.
All right, we'll open up segment 3 and talk about Michael Porter Jr. I don't know if we had a specific trade for him, but I mean, we touched on him earlier, and he's one of the NBA's most elite shooters, at 6'10". So that's pretty
So Ryan had
self-explanatory, right? Yeah.
Tobias Harris plus Jaden Ivey plus the 2028 first-round pick for Michael Porter Jr. Truth teller, we're going to get to Bobby Portis, so we'll get to that. I know some other people are throwing out some names, I'm just going through the list, and we're going to have to speed up just a little bit. The one thing I will say is I'd have to workshop this a little bit more, step-in rules and stuff like that. I don't think I want to trade the 2026 first. I think I'd want to keep the 2026. I do think the Pistons could I realize it's going to be at the end of the first round. I do think they could use bringing in a first-round rookie this offseason. So I would rather trade the 2028. And I believe I would have to workshop that with the step-in rules in terms of okay, what does that where's that put you in terms of in the future, trading 3 firsts and stuff like that. My thing with Michael Porter Jr. is just like, are we buying high on a guy that's just like having but the dude, here's the thing that I do have to remember. He was part of a championship roster 02. Like he did play a role. And I wonder if the role in Detroit actually blends between them. In Brooklyn, he has a little too much freedom. In Denver, maybe felt like he didn't have enough freedom. So in Detroit, it's like kind of right in the middle.
Yeah, I think he would be sort of a second, third option for this team. I still think there would be nights maybe where Duran gets it going. But MPJ, I mean, he's been very efficient. First option for Brooklyn, obviously not leading to any wins, but he's maintained the efficiency he had in Denver as a third option, as a first option. So I think that actually bodes really well for him coming to Detroit and being a legitimate second option, even though he hasn't really done that in his career. Like you said, it would be a hybrid of the role he had in Denver and the role he has currently with Brooklyn. And he will step in and fill a huge need because you don't have to defer to a Jokic and a Jamal Murray, two guys obviously who have the ball a lot. You defer to Cade here in Detroit, but other than that, you want him shooting. I mean, there's a lot of possessions where ideally you want that to end a Michael Porter Jr. shot. Yeah, like I said earlier, I mean, I think just from a play standpoint, from a value standpoint, like he really makes a lot of sense for this team. I think it would just come down to what Brooklyn, ultimately is going to settle for. And obviously that's in relation to the rest of the league. If you're a bad team, you could offer a better draft pick, but probably doesn't make sense to offer a good draft pick for a guy in MPJ who only has 1 year left. And if you're not competitive, you're probably not going to want to add $40 billion to the books. The only downside is that you can't trade for him without also trading Tobias Harris. Like just from a contract standpoint, Tobias making $26 billion, like you just have to include Tobias in that. So I still think that kind of leaves you not very deep at power forward. And I also think Tobias has been really good for this team. So, I think that is a real downside. If there is a downside for going for MPJ, that's to me the biggest one. That's just that you would have to part with Tobias Harris in that deal.
I think a couple other fair points. Trutella, I just don't think Nets would want Ivy. They just drafted 3 guards. I think the Nets would want Holland. I do think that that's an important thing to know. Like Jaden Ivey's in a contract year for whatever team signs, would trade for him as well, So like regardless of anything on the court coming back from the injury, what are other teams going to value in terms of the young players on the Detroit roster? And then our guy Laz says, is podcast guest MPJ a locker room fit though? I think it's a fair point. I can't go on podcasts and scream about the Pistons chemistry and that there just seems to be something special with this group and stuff like that, and then throw that to the wind whenever we're talking about bringing other personalities into the locker room. All right, here from our guy Kyle Metz, essentially it's 3 second-round picks for Bobby Portis. That's part of a bigger trade, but we've kind of done the Bobby Portis thing. I like it. I will say I watched the game the other night. It's like, goodness gracious, that defense is really bad. But I do like the idea of just that archetype of player coming off the bench. He's shooting the ball extremely well right now. I would be fine with this. I don't think this is a massive move. But could you get Portis and MPJ in separate deals? I think, right here we're talking
because of the TPE.
Yeah. You could a couple second round picks for Portis in the TPE. You match salary and draft capital for Porter Jr. Like, absolutely, there could be a combination of deals here.
I actually mentioned Portis among the TPE options in my story the other week. But yeah, I mean, another guy that just makes sense. A true power forward, very strong track record as a scorer and a shooter. I believe, his defense has slipped. I don't know how much of that is just, him having to do, so much for this Milwaukee team that's going nowhere fast. Maybe, where he has a more specific role with the Pistons, that defense could pick up a bit. But as far as TPE options, as far as guys in that salary range, he's about as good as it gets. Honestly, I think if you're just looking purely at fit, he would come in, starting immediately at backup power forward. And that's a pretty straightforward fit for this team. If you could get it done with 3 second round picks, I don't know. But FYI, the Pistons have at least 12 second round picks they can include in deals. So that does give you a little bit of flexibility, going into the trade deadline. So I like Bobby Portis. My only question more so is just like, how many guys can you have in the locker room that are just absolutely about the action?
Is this one too many? Do they have the perfect blend of those type? This is true. They might be right there
with Stu, Bobby Portis, and Ron. I don't know.
There might be one too many.
That's a trio. That's a real trio when it comes to making stuff happen on the floor. So I don't know. But
all right.
Just purely about his game, yeah, I like it.
Ben has, and listen, guys, I apologize. We're not going to get to all of the ones that I was hoping to. So thank you guys so much for everything you threw in. And we may have another episode before the deadline plays out. We'll see. But Ben had a couple, but one was LeVert and Ivy for Klay Thompson, Caleb Martin, Max Christie. Like, again, not like getting into value too much. We've talked about Klay, Omari. Max Christie's really good. If they could get Max Christie on this team, I don't think that gets it done. But I think
Dallas would be silly to trade him. They would be silly to trade him straight up. Yeah.
I think Max Christie would be a really interesting option playing next to Cade Cunningham. I don't think they're getting off Christie. He's going to end up being the best thing they got back in the Luka trick.
By far, yeah.
Every time I've watched him recently, he's been incredible. And so to Ben's idea, I love the idea. I just don't think it's feasible. I think I'd be more excited maybe about Max Christie than like even Ayo Dosunmu. And I love Ayo Dosunmu. I think Ayo Dosunmu is really good, but I think Ayo Dosunmu probably still is coming off the bench. I think Max Christie comes in right away, starts next to Cade, and does a heck of a job.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm Dallas, I'm demanding 3 first-round picks for him. Like, he's good. Like, he's a perfect fit for this Pistons team. He's a Spartan, which is always a plus. Especially on the Pistons team that's got 2 Michigan guys. No offense to Duncan and Karras, but we could use a little bit of balancing in there. But yeah, I mean, Max Christie, I don't know why Dallas would trade him. Like, just straight up, I think they'd be silly to trade him.
People are aggregating me in the comments in a very unfair way, and I do not appreciate it, guys. Kyle did it earlier. Now our guy FlyMonk321 is doing it. FlyMonk, did you say you're going to be at the game tomorrow? Make sure you say hello. We got to get to him quick here. Just names. I brought up Norm Powell on Game Theory. Your thoughts on Norm Powell? If you could get Norm Powell for a first-round pick, and the thing with Norm is you don't have to trade Tobias. I think it's Karras, and then you can make it work from there. But that's why I think Norm is interesting also.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of put Norm in that MPJ tier where, he just could have come in and be, essentially second option. Long, sustained track record for being a really strong shooter. I don't think he's bad defensively either. I know we're going to speed up a bit. I don't know what it would take to get that done with Miami. I'm curious to see where they're at just from an organization, though. They're not going to win a championship this year. So, like, which way are you leaning as far as how you value your assets? But big fan of his game. Like, I think he would be a great fit here in Detroit.
So Kyle says LeVert money-wise is enough as well. Greg, that was from Beat Farm 19. Greg brought up CJ McCollum. CJ is interesting to me. I just don't know he can be traded. He'd just have to be by himself. It's the money on CJ is what's tough. You got to get to 31 million.
40, right?
30.
Yeah.
No, it's 30. It's lower 30, but still.
Okay.
It's a little bit tougher to get there with him, I feel like. But it's an interesting idea. He is expiring, Omari.
Yeah, CJ, I think he's a good fit for this team. Like, Atlanta, like, they don't have another point guard other than CJ. So, if I'm at Atlanta, like, I would absolutely need some type of point guard play back to trade him. I also think just roster-wise, because of where salary is at, like, you're probably going to have to trade Duncan and Karras to get to that number, or, some combination of Duncan, Karras,
so Ivy and Karras get you there. This brings me back to, like, I don't love trading Ivy for a 1-year rental, I think.
Yeah, I don't love the value there. And like I said, I don't know if Atlanta, like, they're in a weird spot. I think they've been winning games, a bit more recently, but if you trade CJ and don't get a point guard back, then, it's just Dyson running point. And I don't think that's an ideal scenario for them. So I don't know when we get it done, but I like CJ's game. I think just the experience he has, he would fill a need for this team. Would certainly cut into Danniss's role, I think, pretty substantially, because I don't know if you're going to play those two guys together in the backcourt more than you have to. But just purely from a game standpoint, obviously he's been a good point guard for a very long time, and would come in and could start in right next to Cade, can run a second unit, shoot at a high level. Yeah, another guard of all the guards we talked about that have to take those boxes.
Mafia Pistons brings up the name Jalen Smith with the Chicago Bulls. I think that's an interesting name. I don't think it's a major needle mover, but it's a guy that can play, space the floor from a big position. I don't know how much I'm comfortable with him playing the 4, and obviously there's not any minutes at the 5, but I think you could do some stuff with him at the 4 and just give you another option come playoff times against certain matchups. So Jalen Smith is interesting to me. Listen, there were some big trades. I know Kyle joked earlier about his Giannis trade. Jaren Jackson Jr. got brought up. My thing with Jaren Jackson Jr. is I think it's just going to take so much to get him. A few other names, Omari, see if you pick out any. RJ Barrett, DeMar DeRozan, Dante DiVincenzo. This was from Out of the Blue podcast. Al Horford. I saw that name in the chat as well. Any of those names kind of interesting to you whatsoever?
Yeah, I like Dante DiVincenzo. I think he can get after it defensively. Really, really strong shooter. I feel like he has a pretty important role for this Milwaukee team. So you'll be curious if he's the guy that they're looking to move off of. DeMar DeRozan, I don't think he really spaces the floor for you. Could he be the second option type? Yeah, but I think just for the salary, age, lack of spacing, I'm not as crazy about that. Al Horford, Al Horford is Al Horford, right? Like, exactly what he's going to give you. Again, the age aspect, makes me a bit nervous with him. And also, do you want him to just purely play power forward for this team? Like, I don't know. I think he's still more of a 5 than a 4. And then who was the fourth guy in that?
DiVincenzo, DeMar, RJ Barrett.
RJ Barrett. I mean, Toronto's been so good. I just don't know if they are eager to trade RJ Barrett. But I mean, as far as 3-and-D wings go, he's one of the better guys on this list. I think he would fit this team perfectly. Yeah, I just don't know if Toronto's going into this deadline we have to trade RJ Barrett. I don't know what direction they're going to go in. Honestly, they've exceeded expectations. They're not quite a contender. I don't know if you consolidate if you're them or exactly what the game plan is. But for the Pistons to get RJ Barrett, it would probably be more expensive than most people are comfortable with anyway. I would imagine.
Yeah, Mr. Ray says AJ Green is the name we should target if we want a shooter. I could not agree more. I would absolutely love to get AJ Green on this team. I think he'd make a lot of sense for them. I just have no idea where Milwaukee's going to go. Okay, we got to get you out of here. There's a lot of conversation. Well, real quick, Laz said, what happened to the Herb Jones rumors, Omari? Anything you've seen on Herb Jones from the Pelicans? Obviously would be a great fit, 3-and-D wing.
Yeah. I mean, he would fit great. He's a better 3-point shooter than Najee Marshall. Would really, really bring a lot defensively and got it defensively. Cost-wise, I'm curious to see what that would cost because they, are in a position where they need draft capital. If I'm New Orleans, I'm just not going to value a 2026 first for the Pistons too much, given that that's probably going to be 28 or 29, I think probably locked in at this point. So, that's almost second round pick range. So, yeah, the player, I like that a lot. I know that there's been some rumors with him. Of all the guys I think the Pistons could acquire, he's not really at the top of my list of ones that are realistic. But I mean, just purely as a player, I think he fits this team pretty well.
Somebody, Brian brought up Saddiq Bey. I yelled at Sam for even the thought of Troy Weaver trading Saddiq Bey. Saddiq has been incredible this year, by the way. If you guys aren't watching, I know they just played the Pelicans, but Saddiq has been really, really good. Okay, we got to get you to supper real quick. Early on, DFizz 313, and I see there's a lot of conversation in the chat right now. We're going to have somewhat of an answer to this in 10 days. Are we seeing the last days of Jaden Ivey? Do you think he did trade him for Wiseman once, but he's not going to make that mistake again, Kyle? He learned his lesson on that one. Listen, where are we at on Jaden Ivey? Do we think he gets traded? Do we think, his time in Detroit is kind of up here, or what do we think?
No, I mean, I would put money on him being traded, but I think long term, I think the main question is he's extension eligible, obviously. Is he going to have the chance to really get the minutes he needs to audition himself for that next deal? And is that a position that the Pistons will prioritize this offseason? I think the most logical thing for all parties, well, I won't say the most logical. I think there is a very great chance that the Pistons just decide to play it out. He's played 30 games. He's a guy that can really shoot the ball. He's a guy that could be that other scorer you need if he does get back to his pre-injury form. And if that happens, I think that kind of changes pretty substantially the conversation surrounding him going into the offseason. But I think you have to at least sort of see where the value is with him. But otherwise, I think there's a setup for both sides to go into the offseason. So we will see. I will not put money on him being traded, but can't completely rule it out.
All right. Hopefully I feel like we got through a lot of names there, guys. Not as many as we wanted. Hopefully that's a decent primer for you guys. And I'm kind of hoping the next time, Quentin Grimes is such a funny name to me because of how Trajan Langdon's, start in Detroit. Thank you. Like Laz says, thanks guys. No, thank you guys for being here. The conversation was great. I still think we have one of the best chats in the NBA space, guys. I've been in on other people's lives and I watch the comments and how rude and mean and crazy people are. And for the most part, everybody's pretty chill, We talk, we conversate, we have a good time. Can't thank you guys enough. If you happen to be at the Nuggets-Pistons game tomorrow on Tuesday, make sure you say what's up. O2 and I. O2's always there. This will be my chance. Yes, Fly Monk will be looking out for the Black Stew jersey. Yes, love it. So, yeah, thank you guys for joining us. O2 has a supper to get to, so we'll let him get there for that.
Yeah, big thanks to everybody for tuning in, and definitely keeping it respectful because I've seen some crazy chats too. So we appreciate you all tapping in with us and adding to the conversation. Still 10 days to the deadline, so we'll figure out when we'll record next week. Probably a good chance we could squeeze another one in there before the deadline. So with that said, I'll close this out. Big thanks to our audio producer, Robin Chan, our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery Nichols, and big shout out to Wes Davenport, as always. And we'll talk to you all next week.